Maybe you should try putting a worm on the hook.
You told the joke wrong.
Well, you guys love to watch me suffer, so here we go again.
In my last Fairly Odder video, I said that I would suffer through the rest of the show with you guys if the video did well. And, yeah, I regret saying that. But, in the words of Joker, I'm a man of my word. So, I once again sold my soul to Paramount Plus to watch the rest of this just hilarious family fun show. But this is where I draw the line with you people. I'm sparing myself and moving on to other video topics after this.
And I will never watch Fairly Odder again. Unless it gets a season 2.
Which sounds like a joke, but if Riverdale has proven us anything, it is totally possible. And hey, look, CW just so happens to be 50% owned by Paramount. Shocker.
Today, we're going to be diving deep into my thoughts on the remaining episodes of Fairly Odder. But before we get into that, I have to tell you guys about something.
When I decided to take the heroic sacrifice to watch this show for you guys so you don't have to, there was something I wanted to keep a tally of. Because this truly was a social experiment which tested the limits of my own mind and how long I could sit through something like this. I wanted to keep track of how many times I audibly laughed. And I'm talking like a full-on LOL moment. However, a few episodes in, I realized that that wasn't fair, because there's no way that would happen.
And spoilers, it didn't happen.
So I created a second tally to go along with this one, where I kept track of how many times I breathed a slight laugh.
You know, if I was watching it and gave sort of like a kind of laugh.
And according to Google, this is called a chortle.
Yeah, so I kept a chortle tally.
And throughout all 12 of the episodes I watched for this video, I did a total of 2 chortles. I chortled once in episode 4 and again in episode 6.
I do not remember what it was I chortled at, but I just wanted to give you guys tangible data for my overall enjoyment I had watching this show.
Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this thing. Before I get into the main plot and characters, I need to get some random thoughts out of the way that I'm not even going to pretend are in some orderly fashion because I don't care enough to do so. One of my main criticisms of the pilot episode was that the show uses the laugh track way too much. And, you guessed it, this problem still stands. In fact, it might actually be even worse now. Not only does this show spam it on unfunny jokes, but it also just spams it on literally anything. Like, there's this part where Vicky talks about how Crocker is in a psychiatric hospital, and then they play the laugh track there. So I guess severe mental illness is funny now? There's a lot of other weird instances like that. Like, okay, I don't even know how to explain this one. So Vicky calls the same psychiatric hospital to get in contact with Crocker, and this operator answers the phone, until he gets pushed away and the real operator explains how this inmate is having delusions that he's an operator.
And I'm not even kidding, the laugh track plays here.
This poor patient is literally suffering from severe schizophrenia, and the laugh track just thinks it's comedy gold.
I genuinely cannot believe this.
Also, there's this scene in episode 7 of the 2 main characters hugging, which is supposed to be like this emotional scene of them reconciling, but then the laugh track just randomly plays. So no, I guess I actually don't know what it's supposed to be. I genuinely want to know who was on the laugh track for this show because it makes no sense. And you know, if this show was actually funny, then I wouldn't hate the laugh track as much.
But that's the thing, it's not.
I mean, in 12 episodes, all this show got out of me was 2 chortles. And the second chortle was like barely a chortle, but I gave the show the benefit of the doubt and counted it. Now, this show being unfunny probably shouldn't have come as a surprise, because I didn't find the pilot episode particularly funny either. But I figured, you know, this show has 12 more entire episodes. Surely they're able to get some good laughs in here, right?
Well, not to spoil it, but no.
Part of that is that this show has a very distinct sense of humor, where characters just act so bombastic and talk like this for no reason at all. Also, I swear, this show has a strange addiction to one character saying one thing, and then cutting to another character saying the exact opposite thing. They did this in episode 1 when Timmy, which by the way, no, he literally doesn't show up in the show at all after that first episode. But anyway, there's this moment where Timmy defends Vivian and says that she's not a mess, and then it cuts to Vivian saying that she is a mess. That's basically this entire show's sense of humor all wrapped up into one joke, and it never changes. Also, this show has an obsession with running jokes. Like, listen, Running jokes can be funny as long as you don't overdo them and limit them to about 2 or 3 jokes.
Well, guess what Fairly Otter does? They overdo it.
It feels like each episode has 5 running jokes going on and none of them are funny. Like, there's this really weird thing in episode 2 where the characters are like obsessed with gumbo. And I swear, they reference gumbo at least 20 different times in the last half of the episode. And according to the laugh track, it's supposed to be this hilarious running joke. It's not even like gumbo has anything to do with the first half of the episode either. This episode is about them trying to make a viral TikTok sound or whatever, which like, yes, this is what Fairly OddParents has come to. But they just randomly start talking about gumbo halfway through the episode and talk about it as if it is the funniest thing on the planet. Also, remember that let's go running joke from episode 1? Well, they dropped that after the pilot. But don't worry, because halfway through the show, they come up with a new annoying running joke. As this kid is now, I guess, known as the oh yeah kid.
Well, guess what? I did not endure through all of those let's goes in episode 1 for you just to switch up his character like that and not even care.
Kids these days may know this kid as the beta male oh yeah kid, but I will forever remember him as the Chad let's go kid. Don't worry though, overused running jokes aren't the only thing this show has. You can't forget about the abundance of pop culture references. It feels like every day in the writer's room, the writers just went on TikTok to see what the kids were talking about. They include all of these scenes of people flossing, hitting the whoa, and saying YOLO because they're trying to be relatable, I guess. Except, here's the problem with doing that. Well, apart from the fact that it's super cringy and makes you lose faith in humanity. But the big problem with it is that putting in any real internet trend into your show or movie is really dangerous because it puts a date on the show and will get left behind much easier. What do you think people will be watching in 10 years? A timeless show about a neglected boy getting fairies to make his life better? Or a show with cringy Fortnite dances that talks about Hamilton and Olivia Rodrigo for no other reason than just to be relatable?
Now, listen, writers, directors, producers of this show, whatever you call yourself, we need to have a talk. Because I need you to understand the weight of your decision here.
Because you chose the cheap relatability route instead of writing characters and themes that are actually relatable, this show will never be timeless now. Because all of these references will cement it into early 2020s culture and will never be able to reach other generations. I mean, it's not like this show is ever going to be timeless anyway, because that would require good writing, but now there's not even a chance for that to happen. Also, there is this pop culture reference.
Yeet, yeet, mother daughters!
Holy God, what are you showing me? Come on!
Oh, but the pop culture references don't stop there. We have to talk about the most glaring one of the entire show, the fake TikTok called Click Clock. It almost feels like this show about fairies talks more about social media than the iCarly revival, which, like, why? So yes, Click Clock is this universe's TikTok. So much so that it literally has the exact same interface as TikTok. Yeah, remember in the older Nickelodeon shows, or as my generation calls them, the good ones? Remember how they would reference real world companies and use their products but change them up in a clever and unique way, like with the Pear phones? In fact, this joke became so meta that they would then do it in the shows that existed within that universe too? Well now, there's no time for that. Just change the name, but use the exact same interface and hope that the CEO of TikTok doesn't notice, I guess. If this show was animated, they probably wouldn't have included as many pop culture references, if any, which just adds to my shrine of reasons as to why this reboot should have been animated.
After watching all 13 episodes of this show, I still firmly stand by this point, and I actually believe it even more now.
Another main problem with Fairly Otter is that it feels like this show is constantly trying to justify the reason as to why Vivian needs fairies. Because even they know there is no reason. And the reason that is that way is because this show is live action. In live action, you are so much more restricted with what you can do. And for something as supernatural and mythical as fairy godparents, you kind of need a lot of room for what you can do. You can't make her life super miserable because then that would be too scary and depressing for kids. And we know that kids are their target audience. Also, live action restricts the kind of wishes that you can do. You really can't go all that crazy with it, like turning someone into a giant snake like Vicky in the original series, or just any monster for that matter, which they still attempted, just further proving that it doesn't work. I think there's one particular scene that just kind of encapsulates how lame this show is with its wishes and how much it's restricted by it being live action. It's in episode 3 when the Let's Go kid wishes to have anything he touches turn to gold, which First of all, it's very inconsistent because why is his shirt not turning to gold? But anyway, somehow a wolf gets wished. I genuinely don't care enough to remember why. But they obviously can't have an actual wolf on set because of how dangerous that is. So they have to do this awkward thing where they use close-up moving shots of people panicking and then just have to add in wolf sounds in post. And it just makes everything feel so cheap. Which, like, again, it is. But you don't want the audience to know that. And the only time they can show the wolf is when it's not even a wolf. Contrast that with, like, any of the wishes Timmy ever made in the original series, and it just goes to show how the imagination here has to be limited. I don't even really think the writers of this show lack creativity.
Okay, well,
But I bet they would have much rather had this show be animated, because then they could have gone much further with all of their ideas. Before we get to the main characters and their stories, we have to talk about another really weird aspect of this show. And it's something that wasn't even a thing yet in the pilot episode. But I'm talking about all of the recurring characters that make up Dimsdale. Like, you have some characters that the show is trying to be relatable with kids again, I think, because you have a Justin Timberlake parody called Dustin Lumberlake, and he appears in this show, like, a lot for some reason. I feel like every new thing this show adds just takes away from the fairies, which is supposed to be the main thing in this show according to the title, but okay. And all of these side characters just have one specific weird shtick to them, and that's their entire character. Like, this one reporter named Judy Stoneface is super serious and exaggerates all of her words like that. I feel like there's a lot of potential here for a reporter character that could have worked way better than Judy Stoneface. Like, remember those hilarious nerdy reporters from the Pack Rat episode in iCarly? Maybe they could have had someone like that who cares so much about everything going on in Vivian and the Let's Go kids' lives. I feel like they could have gotten a lot more natural comedy out of something like that than whatever over-exaggeration they do in this show. It feels like they're trying too hard to make these side characters quirky and unique. There's this other recurring character named Nate Bucksaplenty, who was basically the beta male version of Bling Bling Boy, as he's supposed to be this rich kid in their school who doesn't have any real friends. But he does have henchmen, I guess, and literally ties up the mom in the show and holds her hostage until she pays him back. And then the parents just like forget about this one episode later. Okay. Also, the Let's Go kid still has his fan base. And I'll admit, there's this one scene that has a really good idea to it, where the Let's Go kid finds out that his fan base doesn't actually know anything about him and that they're not true fans. And this really should have caused an existential crisis for the Let's Go kid, but they don't really do anything with it. By the end of the episode, they just agree to still be his fan base even though they don't know anything about him. And then they just kind of drop that storyline in future episodes because the show doesn't have time to build the bond of a bunch of side characters. You could say that it kind of seems like a pointless addition to add in the first place if they're not going to do anything with it, and you would be right. Also, remember that one cop from the first episode? The one with that forced New York accent and was in that pointless scene I talked about? Yeah, he doesn't show up again. So that scene will forever live on in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most pointless scene ever put to film. Now, while we're talking about side characters, we have to talk about Vicky and Crocker, which, apart from Timmy and the fairies, are the only characters carried over from the original show.
And I actually don't hate them, I think.
Let's start with Vicky, as she's in the show more. I actually do genuinely like the idea that she becomes a teacher. It makes a lot of sense for her character, as she is someone who wants to be in control. However, how she fell in love with Crocker, yeah, you got me there. I mean, I guess you could make a claim that she likes him because he also likes being in control and hating kids, but there's like a 40-year difference going on here, so... Also, there's this one part where Vicky becomes best friends with Vivian and the Let's Go kid, and like hangs out with them at their house.
Let's just do some quick mathematics here.
Timmy was 10 in the original series, and he's 18 now going to college. So we know that there is an 8-year difference between the shows. Vicky was 16 in the original show, so now she is 24.
I am quite possibly sure this entire situation is very illegal, but okay.
But it's okay, because she just got mind controlled into being their friend, even though later in the show, Wanda says mind control is against the rules. Okay. I guess that very strict rule also doesn't apply to the wish in episode 1, but sure. But whatever, back on track. We've already established that this show doesn't care about the rules, because if it did, Vivian wouldn't have fairies. So Vicky is in love with Crocker and wants to prove that fairies are real so he can be proven not insane and leave his psychiatric hospital so they can be together. Until it's clear that Crocker was just using Vicky, because in the last episode he just casually escapes a high security psychiatric hospital by himself.
Which, what is even going on anymore?
It turns out Crocker wants to make a portal into Fairy World for some reason. Also, I will say, I think it's pretty cool that Crocker is played by the voice actor in the original show. But anyway, then Vivian and the Let's Go Kid have this boss fight with PS2 graphics, and Crocker gets captured and put in Fairy World prison off screen.
Kinda makes you question the point of everything leading up to this, but okay.
The idea of Vicky and Crocker teaming up like this is pretty good and actually makes a lot of sense. But my problem with it is that this show tries to get so big with the stakes at the end, even though there was barely any setup for that to happen. Episode 4 is the only episode that sets up Vicky's motivations and plan, and then it just forgets about it for 8 episodes, and then brings it back up in the final 2 as if it was planning this all along. There is not enough buildup to justify the stakes being this high. Also, while we're here, we can talk about Cosmo and Wanda, because they weirdly feel like side characters in their own show. I know a lot of other people online have already said this, but it's so true. They just don't have near the relationship with Vivian and the Let's Go Kid that they had with Timmy. However, something I actually do really like about them in this show is their relationship. It's nice to see them genuinely care about each other and act like friends. And some of my favorite moments with them are when the kids are absent and it's just them hanging out. I'm glad the show at least got that right.
But yes, it is time. We have finally arrived to talking about the 5 human main characters of this show. Starting off with the odd one of the group, Xena.
So, remember that stalker girl I talked about in the first episode? She's a main character now. And literally her entire character is just having a crush on the Let's Go Kid. It feels like every time Xena is on screen, the writers are constantly trying to justify her existence. She's this super enthusiastic person who takes it upon herself to be Vivian's best friend. And I guess you could maybe say that this is another attempt to make it seem like Vivian doesn't have any real friends. But I don't know, Xena does quite a bit for Vivian throughout the series. I mean, she sits with her at lunch, helps her fix some of the wishes she accidentally causes, and even fights Vicky in this scene that looks like they got the director of Hulk to direct it. And it has weirdly good choreography. So if they were trying to portray Xena as someone who made Vivian's life worse, then they really didn't succeed at that. Alright, now on to the parents. First of all, and I have to talk about this, it feels like the parents here should have been switched for the characters. You know what I mean? The Let's Go Kid's mom looks a lot like Vivian, and Vivian's dad looks weirdly similar to the Let's Go Kid, but whatever, moving on. It feels like in the entire show, Vivian's dad is trying to do this discount Ryan Reynolds impersonation. You know what I mean? He just says his lines very softly and matter-of-factly, and it just comes off so clear that this is what the actor is trying to do. Also, they do this thing in the last episode of the show where the family are sitting down together and talking about how they're so glad they're a family now, which literally comes out of nowhere, and they do not earn that moment at all. It doesn't make any sense, because Vivian's stepmom is always so mean to Vivian, kind of, and they never reconciled before that moment. She's really the only thing the writers have to make it feel like Vivian kind of needs fairies.
I mean, again, it's still nothing compared to the literal abuse and neglect that Timmy went through, but whatever.
Okay, we're almost at the end here, just keep powering through. We have finally made it to the final 2 main characters to talk about. First up, we have the infamous Let's Go Kid. If Vivian doesn't have any reason to need fairies, then the Let's Go Kid really doesn't have any reason. They give up his thing of how he's the most popular kid in school and everyone loves him, and in the last episode, Vivian, who claims to be selfless, says how the Let's Go Kid is very selfish with his wishes. Even though in episode 9 he wishes up an entire low-budget reject Godzilla and she says that it was actually really sweet. So why she feels that way all of a sudden really doesn't make any sense. Kind of like how everything doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not even going to waste my time talking about the Let's Go Kid, because you know what you're getting with him. He's just an annoying, over-the-top, exaggerated kid who never changes. I am more interested in talking about Vivian and how her story literally makes no no sense.
Let me just run you through the character of Vivian Turner here, shall we?
So, as we know, she got her fairies from Timmy, even though she has no real reason of needing them. And she's a quirky and not like other girls girl who doesn't care about popularity, I think. Because in some episodes, she says she doesn't care about approval, and in others, she does. Like when she wishes to be the most popular person at their school. And that's not just the only episode. There's other ones where it's so clear that she cares about approval from her peers, even though she is supposed to be this outcast that embraces her different side. Like, why would she wish for her own talk show if she didn't want to be the center of attention? I know she uses it to give stuff to people, but still, did she really need her own talk show with her name plastered everywhere and all cameras on her for her to do that?
She keeps telling the Let's Go kid how selfless her wish was, but she's really not any better than the Let's Go kid.
And finally, here's a weird thing about her character. So in episode 9, an old friend from Oldsburg comes, and Vivian starts hanging out with her instead of the Let's Go kid and Xena. And actually, despite all of the weirdness this episode has, it probably is my favorite episode. I love seeing the Let's Go kid and Xena scrambling to find out what to do as someone came in and connected so much better with Vivian than they ever could. But since this character is here now and being friends with Vivian, the Let's Go kid and Cosmo and Wanda fear that if this continues, they will be sent off to another kid because she won't need them anymore. Proving that literally the only reason she has fairies is because she has a hard time making friends.
Look, I know I said this in my other video, so I really shouldn't be that surprised by this, but that was more so just my interpretation of it all. And so I am shocked to find out that this is the actual official reason.
Because by the end of that episode, when she finds out her old friend is actually mean and she embraces her new friends, she should have gotten her fairies taken away right then and there. But no, she just keeps them. But okay, whatever. Maybe you can argue that it's actually the family which lets her have fairies. But that doesn't make any sense either. Because like I said before, by the end of the last episode, they're a happy family now, I guess? So there is literally no reason for her to have fairies now. Now, they're just not even trying to hide it. Listen, maybe I'm beating a dead horse here, but that's kind of this show in a nutshell. All this show is just running jokes and character shticks over and over again, hoping that people will laugh at them. And if someone watching this video does find this show funny, then go for it. I'm not gonna ruin your vibe. But when a show makes a fourth wall joke about hopefully getting a season 2 and trying to get you to buy Paramount Plus while you are watching Paramount Plus, it just makes you wonder what is going on, man.
I'd rather use that money for a subscription to Fairmount Plus.
Is a mountain of entertainment.
Well, I did it, guys. I survived.
I can finally talk about other things on this channel again. But don't worry, the moment I hear about this show season 2, if it happens, I'll come back to review it.
It'll be like my bat signal, because I am the shadows. Okay, stupid.